Part 5, we're getting there. So here we are with lines that we created at specific dimensions using our ortho. And now what we want to do is we want to start to apply some modifiers to it. And modifiers just mean that they modify the existing objects you already have. So if you look underneath the Modify tab and ribbon, you'll see that there's Move, Copy, Stretch, Rotate, Mirror, Scale, so on and so forth. Those are the modify commands. So you'll see that they modify what we've already created. What we want to do first is we want to start to work with some of these commands. And the first one that we're going to do is one that we've already reviewed. So that's the erase command. What's different from our review before is I'm going to show you that with the modifier commands, you can either select the object and then enter the command, or you can enter the command first and then select the object. So they can really be done both ways. So to begin with, which what we did before, is if I hit E for erase and enter, I can select my objects and erase it. Okay, and also the erase command is not limited to erasing one object. You can erase as many objects as you want. So a lot of times these modifiers will affect more than one object. So in that case, what I did is I selected the command first, so selected the object second, hit enter, and deleted it. Now what I can also do is I can select the objects first, then type E for erase and enter, and you'll see that now it can erase multiple objects. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rest of these objects and I'm going to erase them. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to work through what you're going to be working through in your homework. And then what we're going to be using for our homework is you're going to be using not only the draw commands in terms of lines, circles, and rectangles, but you're also going to be using the copy commands in order to create spacing, between the lines. You have a set of vertical lines and you have sort of horizontal lines, so you have to have certain spacing between them. So to begin with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with drawing a line. So I'm going to make sure that my ortho is on. If it's not on, then I can either click on the button down here, or I can use my F8 to turn it on and off. Okay, I'm going to type in L for line, and I'm going to draw a line at 1 foot, let's say 10 and 3/8 of an inch. Okay, once I have my line drawn, I'm going to hit escape because I just want one singular line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my copy command. Okay, so my copy command, either I can click on the button above, I can type in copy, or I can type in CO for copy. Okay, these aliases, those again are some things that you'll need to memorize a little bit. But again, if you start typing it, you'll see that it shows up in your options of commands now. So if I hit CO for copy and enter, I'm going to select my object or objects. Okay, so I do have the option of selecting more than one object. And I can select that object using my green selection box, and the reason that works is that anything that touches the green selection box is going to be selected, unlike the blue selection box. Now, what it's asking me to do is I'm selecting my objects. Okay, and once I've done that, hit enter in order to get into the next phase of that command. Okay, so this type of command has multiple steps to it. It's going to ask me to specify my base point. Okay, or you'll see down below it's asking for displacement mode. Okay, and you'll see that that O is in the middle of that mode. So that's specifying that O, is the letter to hit for that activating that subcommand. But we're not going to worry about that now. What we're going to do is we're just going to specify the base point using essentially what are our object snaps. Okay, so our object snaps are also down in our drafting settings, and they are 2 down from the ortho, and they're also indicated by the F3 key. So if you want to turn them on and off, you can hit F3, and that'll turn them on and off. And you can do that while you're actually in a command. But what they do is they ensure that we snap to a specific point on an object, okay, in order to get the most accurate type of drawing that we can get. And this, again, is very important because when you start to work with these drawings and you start to draw, they're used for construction, okay? And so that precision And anybody working with those drawings have to have that precision in order to make the process run smoothly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my object snap is on. Okay, and in order to figure out what your object snap, basically going to snap to, if you right click on the button, anything that has that blue square around it is going to be activated. So you'll find that there'll be times when you need to snap to a midpoint, okay, or a node, or perpendicular nearest, anything like that. And again, as we go through and you start to become more comfortable with AutoCAD, you'll figure out which ones you want on. Typically midpoint is on, but you'll see for now we want to work with an endpoint, and that's for this example we'll work with the endpoint, and that's on already. So I'm going to hit escape just to get out of that command because I was doing something I didn't want it to do. So I'm going to type in copy again. Okay, CO, enter, select my object, hit enter, get into that second tier of the command. Okay, so I'm going to specify my base point where I'm going to hover my mouse around the end of it. And you'll see that when it does that, this green square comes up. Okay, and it says endpoint, and that's going to snap to that endpoint. So I can click. And now my ortho is on, so I know that I'm going to get a line of lines straight across from each other as long as my ortho is on. If my ortho is off, okay, so if I hit my F8 key, you'll see that it's going to rubber band wherever my cursor is. So I'm going to make sure that my ortho is on. And to specify that spacing, okay, I can type in a distance. So if I want it to be 6 3/4 of an inch, okay, I'm going to use the same format as I did when I made those lines at those different distances using fractions and feet and inches. So if I hit enter, it's going to snap this second line at 6 3/4 inches away from that first one. Okay, and I can keep going if I want. I can keep copying and copying and copying until I hit escape to get out of the command. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this one just for 1 second, and I'm going to copy, okay, CO, enter, select my objects, okay, I'm going to specify my base point, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 5-inch spacings between a series of lines. So I'm going to type in 5, okay, and again, AutoCAD recognizes just a number as inches, so I can just say 5, enter, in order to get the second line 5 inches away from the first. Now, if I want to continue with this, okay, if I want a series of lines like in the homework, 5 inches in between them, what I can do is this first one is 5, so this next one I can type in 10 for 10 inches, 15 for 15 inches, 20 for 20 inches, and so on and so forth. Okay, so just keep in mind that when you start to use this copy command, it always starts from that base point. Okay, and so sometimes you might find that it's easy. If it's an easy increment like 5 inches, you can work with it in that multitude. You just do 5, 10, 15, 20. Or if you find that, for example, if I copy this over and I copy this line, again, 6 3/4 inches away from it, I really don't want to do the math and do, okay, well, 6 3/4 times 2 times 3 times 4. Instead, what I can do is I can copy the second one again, 6 3/4. Okay, or what I can do is I know that this spacing is 6 3/4. So what I can do is rather than typing in a specific dimension, okay, the 6 3/4 and 6 3/4 and 6 3/4, what I can do is I can actually use the base points in order to copy an object off of another object. So for an example, I can type in CO for copy. I'm going to copy this one, okay, but I know the 6 3/4 spacing is the same as the spacing in between these two lines. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to go back to the one before, and I'm going to just use that endpoint as the base point, and I'm going to use this point as my second point. And now what it did is it copied this line 6 3/4 inches away from this line, the first one, and I can keep going with that. Now the one thing with that particular methodology is you just have to make sure that you're not copying objects on top of each other, because once you do, you're going to get objects that are overlapping on each other. And what we want to do is we want to keep our drawings as clean as possible, because when we start to work with it a little bit more, you'll see why that's a little bit more urgent than right now. So that's essentially the object snaps, and we're going to be using those more as we get into it. There's two other commands. There's undo and redo. If I want to undo a command, I can do U and enter, and I can undo that last command. If I want to redo it, if I type in redo and enter, it will redo that command. Now, AutoCAD will keep track of your steps, basically since you've opened up the file. So it really does go back a long way. So you can do undo, 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 and you can essentially get back pretty far in what you've already done. So if I type in undo, okay, I can go back, and again, in order to redo a command, all I have to do is hit enter. So if I want to undo a lot of steps, I don't have to do, undo, enter, undo, enter, undo, enter. But in order to recall that last step, okay, all I have to do is hit enter, enter, enter. Okay, because it redoes the last command. So as long as my last command was undo, then I can just hit enter, enter, and enter in order to undo all those steps. Now again, if I type in redo, okay, that'll allow me to redo the steps too as well. And those same buttons, okay, are the buttons associated with that command are up at the top too. So you can also click on those in order to redo the steps that you've created.